rather than singing a love song? That depends on the group I'm singing with. What about me? I guess I'll take a chance. The Bee Gees made a mark on the music world with their unique harmony vocals, catchy beats, and all-time hits. From the disco era to now, their impact can be felt in many music styles and generations. But the Bee Gees story isn't just about how great their music was. It's also a story about a terrible loss. The world has been changed a lot by the lives and deaths of these famous artists. They have changed how we think about music and the people who make it. Come with us as we look at the Bee Gees' impact and the sad stories of how they died. The Roots, also known as the Bee Gees, were a band that made music that people loved. They were known for their catchy songs and smooth harmonies. Before the Bee Gees were even formed, though, Hugh Gibb Jr., their dad, liked music. With his own big band, he played the drums in bars and ballrooms all over England and Scotland. One day in 1941, he saw a young woman named Barbara Pass at a dance in Manchester. They became married 3 years after they met. Leslie Barber was their first child. She was born in 1945. On September 1st, 1946, Barry Allen Crompton Gibb, the oldest Bee Gee, was born on the Isle of Man. On December 22, 1949, his twin brothers Maurice Ernest and Robin Hugh came along. Though they were brothers, they were all very different people. Maurice was funny, Robin had a lot of ideas, and Barry wanted to do well. They were all good at music from a young age, and they could sing really well together. By the middle of the 1950s, Elvis Presley and the Everly Brothers songs were getting them crazy. In 1956, they took their first stage performance at a nearby movie theater where they imitated songs before Saturday matinees and went by the name Rattlesnakes. The fans really liked them. They kept playing and changed their name to We Johnny Hayes and the Blue Cats. In 1958, they even kept people entertained on the way to Australia. When they got to Australia, a radio host named Bill Gates heard them and helped them get known. They worked hard and didn't give up until they got a record deal. In 1966, they released their first hit, Spicks and Specks. They did well, but it wasn't easy. Along the way, they had challenges and failed, but they never gave up. When Robert Stigwood saw them, they got their big break. In 1967, he signed them to a 5-year deal. With Stigwood's help, they put out New York Mining Disaster 1941, which became their first foreign hit. The rest is history. There were a lot of great songs by the Bee Gees, well known for their unique sound and catchy songs. They began as 3 brothers from Manchester who loved music and wanted to share it with the world. This was the start of their career. Before we look at how the Bee Gees' sad ending turned out, let's think about their lives. Robin left the Bee Gees to go out on his own in the 1970s, but his brothers Barry, Maurice, and Peterson kept the band going. They put out a record called Cucumber Castle and rocked out without Robin. Sometimes their sister Leslie filled in for Robin. They even did a TV show with Frankie Howard and other famous people, but things went badly. Terry Cox was put in place of Peterson while the movie was being filmed. It wasn't a big hit for them, but Don't Forget to Remember did pretty well in the UK. Barry and Maurice even took a break from each other for a while. He also tried to make a solo record called The Loner, but it didn't do very well. At the same time, Robin was doing great with Saved by the Bell in Europe and Australia. Then in 1970, Robin suggested that the group get back together. They were back in business by August 21st. 2 Years On came out in 1970, and Trafalgar came out in 1971. How Can You Mend a Broken Heart was a hit from it. By 1972, Chuck Berry was one of their biggest stars. But by 1973, their records weren't selling like crazy, and they were having a hard time. When they switched to disco and moved to Miami in 1975, they hit it big. I really liked their record Main Course. It had great songs like Jive Talkin' and Nights on Broadway. They were on TV with Helen Reddy too. Hits like You Should Be Dancing were on their next record, Children of the World. Then came Saturday Night Fever in 1977, which was the big one. Grammy Awards were given to them for hits like How Deep Is Your Love and Stayin' Alive. In the late 1970s, they kept making music that people liked with hits like Too Much Heaven and Tragedy. As disco died down at the end of the decade, they stopped going on tour as much. Even though they were very successful, they got some bad press. Some radio stations even said they wouldn't play Bee Gee on the weekends. But they kept making music into the 1980s, though it never got as popular as when they were in disco. His album Sunrise, which had songs by the Gibb brothers, including the #1 hit Hold On To My Love, were big hits all over the world. Their album Living Eyes wasn't a big hit in 1981, but the song He's a Liar did well. Many of Dionne Warwick's hits in 1982 came from songs written by the Bee Gees. For example, Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers Islands. In the stream they were back with the Staying Alive soundtrack, but their song How Deep Is Your Love got them in trouble with the law, so Barry went solo. Robin put out 3 solo albums, and Maurice put out another single in 1985. Diana Ross's album Eaten Alive, which had songs by the Bee Gees on it, was a big hit, selling over 2 million copies. Their single You Win Again went to the top of the charts all over the world. Later, they worked with Eric Clapton for charity. Then, in 1989, they released an album with the hit song Wish You Were Here, which was a tribute to their late brother Andy. They went on tour around the world, and in the UK, their EP of hits, The Very Best of the Bee Gees, was a big hit. Records like High Civilization and Size Isn't Everything gave them ups and downs in the 1990s. But in 1997, they came back strong with the hit album Still Waters, which did very well in both the US and the UK, award for making a great contribution to music. In 1997, they played a big show in Las Vegas and then toured the whole world. The music from Saturday Night Fever was turned into a live show in 1998, and new songs were made for it. They also put out a fundraiser song for the Isle of Man. On New Year's Eve 1999, they played their last big show. They went more slowly after that, but Barry and Robin kept making songs. Robin died in 2012 from liver cancer. The music they made will live on in Barry's independent work. Robin Gibb married Molly Hollis in 1968. They were both in a scary train crash together, but then they had 2 beautiful children. In the end, they split up in 1980. Robin, on the other hand, found love again when he married Dwenna Murphy in 1985. Their son, Robin John, was born to them together, but Robbins didn't stop building his family. Robin had a daughter named Snow Evelyn Robin Juliet. His life took him to many places, from the quiet Isle of Man to the busy city of Miami to the quiet village of Thame in Oxfordshire. Even though Robin lived in a lot of different places, he had to deal with some very sad family events. Andy died in 1988, and Maurice died in 2003. Their deaths left deep hurts that time could never fully heal. From taking part in politics, he backed the British Labour Party and became friendly with Tony Blair, the Prime Minister. There was more to Robin Gibb than just his music. He also liked to help others. He put together cool events like the Sunseeker Ball and was even president of CISAC once. But things went wrong in his life. In 2010, while rocking out in Belgium, something went wrong with my health. He had to act quickly to get surgery back in Oxford. He got over that scare, but then he had more health problems. He fought colon cancer and pneumonia very well in 2011. He lived until 2012, but kidney disease took his life. Robin hasn't been forgotten, though. His songs will always be remembered, and his kind heart will live on through the charity work he did. He was buried in Thame, Oxfordshire, after he died. If you ever go to his grave, you'll see a headstone with some of his song lyrics written on it. They talk about keeping his memory alive for future generations. Maurice Gibb in 1968, Maurice Gibb, one-third of the Bee Gees, met Lulu, a Scottish pop singer, thanks to a friend who put them in touch. How they got together? Yes, it was a wild ride with lots of ups and downs. Maurice thought back to how many times they'd break up and then get back together, but in the end, he chose to stay with Lulu. Looking back, he wished he had, and he told her he called her a lot from sunny Los Angeles. They took the jump and got married the next year, in 1969. But their love story hit a rough spot just 4 years later, in 1973. Why? It was hard for them to stay married because of their crazy busy jobs and Maurice's love of drinking. In the end, they went their different ways without any kids to call their own because they loved to party. The fun for Maurice didn't end there, though. Barbara Windsor wrote in her book that she told everyone and said she had a brief relationship with him, too. His love life seemed to be just as exciting as his music business. It took Maurice Gibb a few failed relationships before he finally found his true love and married Yvonne Spenceley Gibb in 1975. But Maurice's life wasn't always happy and bright. He battled alcoholism and hit rock bottom in 1991 when things got so bad that he ended up. That was a wake-up call for him, and after a stay in rehab, he chose to change his life. Maurice said that his brothers and the heavy guilt he felt over the death of his youngest brother Andy were to blame for his recovery. Up until his sudden death at age 53 in 2003, Maurice was able to stay on the straight and narrow. A twist in his stomach caused him to pass away after surgery. His death left a huge hole in the hearts of his family and friends. Even famous people who came to his private funeral to show their respect couldn't get over their shock and grief. They wanted to know more about how Maurice killed himself. They told each other how shocked and sad they were about the death of their beloved brother. Robin Gibb was very upset when he lost his close friend and music partner Maurice. He had a hard time imagining his life without Maurice. The Bee Gees even stopped performing for a while to grieve. But in the end, they felt drawn back to the stage. That's why they cleaned up and went back out there. Robin and the rest of the Bee Gees were into more than just having fun when they hit those high notes. It was a way for them to remember Maurice and keep his spirit living through music. Andy Gibb. Andy Gibb's success was like a shooting star. It was bright but short-lived. I Just Want to Be Your Everything, Shadow Dancing, Stealing Hearts, and Climbing the Charts were some of his first big hits. In the late 1970s, he was a teen idol thanks to his smooth, silky singing and catchy songs. Like his songs, Andy Gibb's life had its ups and downs. They got married to Kim Reeder on July 11, 1976, but things went badly between them, and on January 15, 1977, they split up. But Andy had to deal with his problems along with the glitz and glam. Even though he was successful at first, he had a hard time with drug abuse, which could have overshadowed his rising star. It looked like he was making progress in early 1988. After giving up drugs, he got ready to make a comeback in music and take back his place in the spotlight. But things didn't go as planned. Andy fell into a deep sadness when his relationship with Victoria Principal took a bad turn. From his band, the Bee Gees, Andy turned to drinking to drown his feelings of sadness, falling back into addiction. Then bad things happened on March 10, 1988. Andy passed away after collapsing. He left behind a body of ability that was tinged with sadness. His death, which was caused by myocarditis and probably made worse by years of drug abuse, shocked the music world. Andy's time in the spotlight was cut short, but his work is still loved by both old and new fans. His timeless songs and soulful voice will always remember us of a great artist who died too soon. Even though Andy Gibb has died, his music lives on as a tribute to a life that was full of both happiness and sadness. Andy Gibb was a dad as well as a singer. Peta, their daughter, was born on January 25, 1970, to him and his wife Kim Reeder. Things didn't go as planned for Andy and Kim, though, and they soon split up. Peta didn't get to spend much time with her dad when she was younger. She was sad that she didn't know him better. Over time, she learned more about how famous he was and how his brothers were in the band Bee Gees. But she only knew him as the person on the other end of the phone. He was not a part of her life. Andy finally rests in peace at Forest Lawn, Los Angeles after he died on March 10, 1988. His gravestone has the words to one of his songs written on it as a respect to his music. Everyone who loved him will always remember his music and be moved by his death. Barb and Hugh Gibb. Hugh Leslie Gibb was born in Manchester to Hugh Gibb and Edith Yardley. Music was in his blood from a very young age. It was something that made him stand out in his family. More important to his family was having a stable job. Hugh, on the other hand, really wanted to do something else, make music. Hugh fell in love when he met Barbara Pass, a beautiful dance band singer. In 1944, they got married, and in 1945, their first child, Joy Leslie, was born. Soon after, they packed their things and drove to Scotland, where Hugh performed on stage in Edinburgh. But that wasn't the end of their trip. In the end, they went back to Manchester and then settled down on the beautiful Isle of Man. Hugh kept chasing his musical dreams there, filling the island with tunes that could be heard everywhere. The first child for Hugh Leslie Gibb and Barbara was born in September 1946. His name is Barry. When Robin and Morris, twins, were born in December 1949, they brought the family even more happiness. Their house was full of the sweet sounds of laughing and little feet stomping around. The Gibb family went on adventures in Scotland and the Isle of Man, but then they came back to their home in Manchester. In 1958, they had their youngest boy, Andy, who made their family complete. But bad things happened in 1988 when Andy Gibb, the youngest, died. Hugh Hard, taking all the fun out of his life. He had a hard time going on, and he died himself 4 years later on Andy's 34th birthday in 1992. Hugh was buried next to Andy in Los Angeles, which was a nice way to honor their friendship. Barbara Gibb, who was the head of the Gibb family, left this world in 2017, and even in her later years, Barbara had a spirit that was strong and resilient. Her death left a hole in the hearts of those who knew and loved her. They were sad about her death, but treasured the memories they had together. Barbara and her husband Hugh were very important in the early singing careers of their two sons. They worked hard to make their skills and dreams come true, setting the stage for the Bee Gees, one of the most famous pop bands ever. The Gibb brothers reached impossible heights with their help and advice. They left such a big mark on the music business because of her and Hugh. Barbara stayed strong and determined even though she was going through unbearable sadness after losing 3 of her children. Her unwavering strength and spirit were a source of hope and motivation, and she left a legacy of love and strength for future generations. Barry Gibb in. This was a great start for Barry Gibb, who is best known for his work with the Bee Gees. He performed on the Grand Ole Opry stage with Ricky Skaggs in 2012, singing 3 songs that showed off his skills. After that, he worked with Skaggs again on Skaggs' record for the song Soldier's Son. Gibb went on a world tour called the Mythology Tour in 2013. It began in Australia. He even had Steve, his son, and Samantha, Maurice's daughter, join him on stage. He played some old Bee Gees hits for the first time and showed off the music video for Technicolor Dreams for the first time during this tour. Because of how well the tour did, box sets of the Bee Gees' Australian records and an album of their hits from that time were released. Gibb kept going on his journey by performing at big events like Saturday Night Live and the Country Music Hall of Fame. He shared the stage with famed artists like Paul McCartney at these events, first record by himself in the Now in 2016. Gibb's new album, which he worked on with his kids Stephen and Ashley, was the start of a new era for him. Gibb's love for music never wavered as he played at famous music events like Glastonbury. In 2020, he talked about his newest record, Greenfields. This will include collaborations with country singers, which shows how his music will live on. Besides music, Gibb loved spending time with his family. He got married to Linda Gray in 1970. He talked about his friendship with Michael Jackson with great affection, showing how close they were. Gibb had an impact all over the world, even though he was mostly based in Miami. Honors, like becoming a freeman of the borough of Douglas and a U.S. citizen with his wife in 2009, made him even more famous in the music world. People will always remember the Bee Gees. A lot of people have been moved by their work, and it will continue to do so. There will always be a special place in music history for the Bee Gees, thanks to their hit songs and the way they influenced future acts. Even though some of them aren't here with us anymore, their music still plays in our minds. What did you think about them? Tell us what you think after you subscribe. Thanks for seeing.